The dogs of the Dow. Are dogs now picking stocks? Why is this strategy called the dogs of the Dow? And how has this strategy outperformed the Dow, the S&P 500, and the Nasdaq in 2022? In today's video, we learn a little bit about the dogs of the Dow and how we can implement this strategy to start off our year. And no, unfortunately, you won't have to train your dog to pick stocks. In 2022, the stock market as a whole fell by quite a bit. The Dow Jones Industrial Average was down 8.9%, the S&P 500 down 19.4%, and the Nasdaq a fast 33%. But the dogs of the Dow picks were only down 1.8%, and with a dividend yield of 4%, if an investor had $100 and invested in this strategy from January of 2022 and looked at their portfolio at the end of 2022, they would have had a little over $102. In other words, they would have come out with a profit in such a terrible year. Okay, so now you're probably really wondering, how can you implement this strategy, right? Well, let's first learn a little bit about why this strategy had such great results. Let's turn to a famous economist, author of A Random Walk Down Wall Street, and see what he has to say about this strategy. Well, he says this strategy is a combination of value and contrarian investment strategies. Wait a moment. I know what you're thinking. We got dogs and now we got contrarians? What the heck is a contrarian? Well, a contrarian investor is one who goes against the current. He or she goes against what the current market direction is and says, no, I don't agree. And thus, this strategy does very well in bear markets coupled with a buy and hold mentality. In other words, you are buying when others are fearful. Now, which great investor said that? So, what is the dogs of the Dow strategy? You're gonna love it. It's so simple. You know how dogs supposedly follow you? They lag behind you? Well, that's what this strategy does. It focuses on the laggards. Put in simple terms, the stocks that this strategy buys are the ones that we believe are probably undervalued by the larger group of investors and may be a good buy because these companies, which are already in the Dow, making them the top tier pick of their industry, if they are this far down compared to the others, it might be a good indication that they will be better in the coming year when the vast majority of people decide it's a good time to buy them because they find that they are the bargains. Makes sense, right? So how do we implement this strategy? Well, this strategy simply buys the top 10 highest dividend yielding stocks of the Dow at the end of every year, and it buys it in equal amounts. And every year you reevaluate to find the next set of 10. For example, in 2022, two of the dogs of the Dow have left. We had Coca-Cola stock price increase by 8% and Merck increased by 45%, and thus both of their dividend yields went down. And in 2023, they are being replaced. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to sell your Coca-Cola shares. Warren Buffett didn't sell his yet, but it does mean that there may be more opportunity in other stocks. All the companies in today's list can be purchased with as little as $5 when using Weeble's fractional share program. So you can build this portfolio with as little as $50. So even if you don't have thousands of dollars to implement this strategy, if you had to buy the stock outright at its current share price in equal parts for all of them, you can still use this strategy simply by using Webull. And if you use the link in the description below, you can get some free stock and help the channel out as well when you deposit $100 and open up a new Webull account. Now, let's get into the dogs. Starting at the bottom, number 10, JP Morgan Chase. Ticker symbol JPM. At the end of 2022, JPM had a dividend yield of 2.9%. Now here's a fun fact about JP Morgan. Have you heard of the board game Monopoly? JP Morgan was actually the inspiration behind the Monopoly Man character. Do they look alike to you? Number 9, CHEVRON Corp, ticker symbol CVX. At the end of 2022, Chevron had a dividend yield of 3.16%. Throwback to the early 2000s. Does anyone remember their commercials? Do you remember those cool cars asking if the Chevron has Techron? I remember thinking, does my car even want Techron? What is Techron? Is it going to make it run cleaner? They look so happy. Moving on to number 8, CISCO. Ticker symbol CSCO. At the end of 2022, CISCO had a dividend yield of 3.19%. Fun fact about CISCO is the founders Len Bosak and Sandy Lerner often like to dress up as superheroes for parties or events, and that has stayed with the culture of the company to this day. Next on our list we have AMGEN, ticker symbol AMGN. Now at the end of 2022, AMGEN had a dividend yield of 3.24%. An interesting thing about AMGEN is that they were the creators of EPOGEN, a drug that stimulates the production of red blood cells to help those with anemia. Crazy thing though, is that with more red blood cells, people without anemia tend to do really well in sports. As a result, EPO was banned in most sport organizations due to it being very similar to doping. Now next on our list we have International Business Machines Corp, ticker symbol IBM. At the end of 2022, IBM had a dividend yield of 4.68%. Now many of us know IBM for their computers and their many patents on devices. That's not all they actually do though. IBM actually patented a drone that could learn how to take care of pets while their owners were at work. Could you imagine that? Your Roomba taking care of your dog. What the heck? Now we're just halfway through our list. If you have any suggestions as to what you would like to see here on the channel with regard to stocks, famous investors, stock strategies, or stories about stocks and investments, please let us know what kinds of videos you'd like to see from us in the comments down below. And if you like what you're watching, be sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you can be amongst the first to know when a new investment inspiration video is available. Now moving on to number 5, 3M, ticker symbol MMM. At the end of 2022, 3M had a dividend yield of 4.97%. Now did you know that 3M's Post-it notes were initially meant as a bookmark? Now Post-it notes are far more useful than holding your last page without damaging a book. Could you imagine if 3M decided that nah, we have enough bookmarks in this world? No Post-its. What a catastrophe. Moving on to number 4, Walgreens Boots and Company's Alliance, ticker symbol WBA. At the end of 2022, Walgreens Boots Alliance had a dividend yield of 5.14%. Now here's something crazy I bet none of you folks knew about Walgreens. Walgreens is actually the birthplace of the malted milkshake. Until 1922, when someone combined a standard malt with extra rich ice cream, malts were just milk mixed with chocolate syrup and a spoonful of malt powder. What? Thank you, Walgreens. Number 3 on our list, Intel Corp, ticker symbol INTC. Now at the end of 2022, Intel had a dividend yield of 5.52% and was actually one of the worst performing stocks on the Dow Jones. In the past, they've had great success with their products like the Pentium, Xeon, and Athenium. But lately, it hasn't been all cool code names and profits. So hopefully they can come up with a new name for something innovative like the Hyperbion or the Superbion or something like that so that they can go ahead and get back into the green. Number 2 on our list, we have Dow, ticker symbol DOW. At the end of 2022, Dow had a dividend yield of 5.56%. Now, I know what you may be thinking, this Dow, the same Dow from Dow Jones? It is not. Different guy with the same name. This Dow makes all kinds of things. The most widely seen in life, if you're like me, is styrofoam. Yep, they make styrofoam. All those packages from Amazon you get with the styrofoam in them so your precious electronics and screens don't smash around in the box, they make that. Lots of it. Before we get into number 1, do you remember why the Dow Jones is called the Dow Jones? It was named after their creators, right? Charles Dow, who was the editor of the Wall Street Journal, and his statistician Edward Jones. With industrial in the name though, it pointed at the index being heavily weighted to the heavy industry sector. The industry was first printed in the Wall Street Journal on May 26, 1896. Now on to the top dog of the dogs of the Dow, we have Verizon, ticker symbol VZ. At the end of 2022, Verizon had a dividend yield of 6.62%. Now I did not know this, but Verizon is actually 2 companies that became one. Many of you might not remember GTE. Remember that globe logo? And how about Bell Atlantic? Well, in 2000, GTE and Bell Atlantic merged to form Verizon. And since then, Verizon has done some interesting things like acquiring Yahoo in 2016, AOL in 2018. I didn't even know AOL still existed in 2018. Well, in 2020, they actually are spinning those two companies off along with the Huffington Post. Yes, Verizon owns the Huffington Post into Yahoo. Now there you have it. If you buy this portfolio at the end of 2022, your combined dividend yield would be 4.5%. Currently, in the first week of January in 2023, the market is down a little bit, so your dividend yield may be a little higher. Remember, this strategy involves buying the same amount of each stock. So it's not one share of Verizon and one share of Dow. It is equal dollar amounts invested in each one. Therefore, if you use Webull's fractional share purchase program, it may be a little bit easier to figure out how many shares or fractions of shares you would need to get the exact amount to implement this strategy. Now in the next video, we'll go over the top growth stocks that Jim Cramer from CNBC likes best for 2023. And we'll see you there.